Hey everyone, it's Professor Clark, and in this rather short lecture, we are going to go over some to, что constructions. These are constructions that enable you to make complex sentences, so they are very useful. They're not exactly what we do in English, so they can be a little bit challenging at first, but as soon as you see some examples and you see how they work, they're normally pretty easy to use. The only caveat I'd say to that is that you do have to know your case endings and your cases. So with that in mind, let's jump into these very useful and fairly simple constructions. Let's start off with the construction to, что, in which что is stressed. And when we have to, что, in which the что is stressed, it means that which. And we use this to link two clauses in which we have a single object that needs to be in two different cases. So in Russian, remember, we always have to use the correct cases that the verb requires, and we can't put one object in two different cases. And so they often use to, что, or some kind of complex construction that is separated by a comma to do this. So if you look at the examples on page 181 of your textbook, you will see that this is the case. In each sentence, we have a single item. We're referring to a single item that needs to be in two different cases in the two different clauses. Sometimes they look the same because they are nominative and accusative, but they are in two different cases in each of the examples. And as you can see in those examples, the way that Russian handles this is to use this construction to, что, and put each element in the necessary case. So to is what we're talking about or what we're referring to in the first clause, and we put it in whatever case it needs to be in. And then что means the same thing, but goes into the correct case in the second clause. So to and что are both referring to the same thing or the same idea. We just use them to put them in two different cases because grammatically we're going to need two different cases. What makes this a little bit confusing, or can make this a little bit confusing, is that что can be both stressed and unstressed, and this means two different things. So if что is pronounced as stressed, and it may be written with a stress mark, then it is the subject or the object of a verb. And so the example I have here is «Мне очень нравится то, что ты пишешь». I really like what you're writing. And I've marked the stress here with что to indicate that it is the direct object of the verb писать. I really like what you're writing. And we see here that to is the subject of the verb нравится, and then что is the object of the verb писать, but they both refer to the same thing. It's what you're writing. Мне очень нравится то, что ты пишешь. However, что can also be pronounced as unstressed, and in that case it will, of course, not be written with a stress mark, when it has the meaning of the conjunction that. So if we have something like «Я знаю, что ты пишешь», that means I know that you write. Not I know what you're writing, but I know that you write. And we can also use it with the same construction, to, что, but with a что is unstressed. And it has this meaning of that or the fact that. So if you see this construction and no stress mark is present, you have to guess from context what it means. So if you see, for example, what I have here at the bottom of this slide, «Мне очень нравится то, что ты пишешь». That could be, I really like the fact that you're writing. Or it could be, «Мне очень нравится то, что ты пишешь». I really like what you're writing. It could go either way. And so you just have to guess from context if there is no stress mark. If there is a stress mark, it only means I really like what you're writing. A related construction is when we use the verb зависит, to depend, and then от, and then either the genitive or some kind of construction like от того что or от того как. And this means it depends on something. In Russian, you can't say it depends. You always have to say what it depends on. So you can't just say зависит, you have to say зависит от, and then something, something, something in the genitive. And so if you want to use it with a noun, you can say something like это зависит от examina. That depends on the exam. But you can also use it with these to, что or to, как constructions plus a verb to say that something depends on an action. So if you look at the examples I have here on the last slide, we can see things like Это зависит от того, что они нам дадут. That depends on what they give us, where we have to, что with the meaning of what. So it's the stressed что. And you see here that we have two different cases. So это зависит от того, genitive, что, accusative, они нам дадут. Or это зависит от того, как вы ответите на вопрос. That depends on how you answer the question. And we can do the same thing with the to, как construction, except that как, of course, is an adverb, and so it never changes, but to goes in whatever case it needs to go in this instance being genitive. Это зависит от того, как вы ответите на вопрос. That depends on how you answer the question. We can also use it with a li construction, meaning whether. So, for instance, это зависит от того, сдадут ли они экзамен. That depends on whether they pass the exam. So there you have a basic introduction to these to, что constructions. They are a little different than what we do in English, and you do have to keep track of the cases, which can make them a little challenging. But the best thing to do, again, is to do lots of reading and to see them being used in written Russian. And you'll quickly get the hang of them, and they will start to feel really straightforward and natural.